Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm going to be calling our Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection, especially given the context of growing geopolitical unrest, wars, conflicts, etc. The list seems to be getting longer and longer every day now. Thank you. Moving on to our land acknowledgement, the municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest to disclose around the table this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3.1, Memorandum 2026-01 Environmental Advisory Committee regarding support for the development for a Vision Zero road safety strategy. And I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Clare.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fairly self-explanatory. Just the committee knew about the notice of motion and wanted to support it because it's in line with the climate action plan that they're looking to advance. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder to receive this for information? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favour? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to item 3.2, Mississauga of the Scugog Island First Nations regarding Garden Hill Dam, Ganaraska River, and I'm going to turn this over to Councillor Mink to introduce the matter.
Thank you. So through the chair, this is the letter that was discussed and read. I believe the CAO read it at the public meeting or special meeting last Tuesday. It's the letter from the Scugog Island First Nations regarding their position on the Garden Hill Dam. There was a lot of questions about this letter, and we're just bringing it forward for transparency so everybody can read that. All the details are in the letter that you can find for yourself if you decide to read it. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there anything particular that you would like to highlight about the letter?
Well, I think it was mostly discussed last week. It's their position on basically some environmental perspectives regarding that pond, but more than anything, it's their request to be a participant in the process, and that would align with objectives of reconciliation.
Thank you for that, and appreciate you bringing that forward. Can I get a mover and seconder to receive this for information? Moved by Councillor Mink, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favour? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, items for consideration. We're going to move on to our first presentation by David Kilburn, CIBC Private Investment Counsel regarding investment update of the 2025 results. So I'm going to ask the presenter, our presenter David, to approach the podium and to begin his presentation. Thank you, Mr. Kilburn.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is David Kilburn. I'm with CIBC Private Investment Counsel, which is part of CIBC Asset Management. My responsibility is to manage a number of portfolios of bonds on behalf of the municipality and certain entities under the responsibility of the municipality. I'll be presenting a brief summary of the 2025 results today, and of course remain available for comments and questions. Thank you. So if I may begin by the Rural Area Fund at December 31st, 2025, the beginning net asset value on January 1st of 2025 was $10,809,856. Interest revenue received over the year was $295,243. Changes in capital, increase of $122,483. Management and custodial fees of $31,729. On a net basis of contributions and withdrawals, a withdrawal of $336,000 for the year, and an ending value at December 31st of $10,859,852. That represents 1 year performance of 3.9% for the fund. As we stand today on a go-forward basis, the yield on cost, or the estimated yield for the next 12 months, is 2.8% based on the current structure of the portfolio, which corresponds to interest expected to be earned in the order of $290,641. For the Urban Area Fund, and just as a reminder, all of these funds are managed in exactly the same way to the same investment policy. Nature of some cash flows in and out and timing of those cash flows can lead to very small variances in performance, but the funds are managed in exactly the same way to the same policy. So the Urban Area Fund to 31 December began the year Jan 1 at $15,888,892. Interest revenue earned over the period of $434,336. Change in capital increase of $181,717. Fees and management and custodial fees of $46,885. Net withdrawals of $321,000 over the period, and an ending period value of $16,137,061. Performance for this fund over the 12-month period rounds to 3.8%, but depending on whether it's between 3.8 and 3.9%. The yield on cost base is currently 2.8%, with $431,395 of expected interest over the next 12 months. The Corporation of the Municipality of Port Hope account over the same period to December 31st began the year at $3,484,871. Interest revenue earned of $112,247. Increase in capital, $38,922. Management and custodial fees of $11,967. No contributions nor withdrawals, and an ending period value of $3,624,072. Performance in this account, 4.3% for the 12 months ended December 31st. Yield on cost base of 3.3%, and annual expected interest next year of $114,309. This is the Cemeteries Trust, the Municipality of Port Hope Cemeteries Trust, over the same period as well. Began the year January 1, 2025 at $1,133,170. Interest revenue earned of $28,972. Increase in capital of $11,909. Management and custodial fees of $3,331. Net withdrawals of $2,992. And an ending period value of $1,167,728. Performance for the 12 months ended December 31st of 3.6%. Yield going forward for the next 12 months estimated at 2.9%, or $31,849 of interest expected to be earned. This concludes my review.
Thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues for any questions or comments around this report. Seeing none, the recommended motion is to receive. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. The recommended motion is to receive this for information. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Darrell. Any further conversation? I have a question for Director Baxter. Just wondering how things are evolving on our future funding investment plans.
So I'm happy to, we've had the opportunity since we last spoke on this to attend some different information sessions. I'm happy to say that our finance manager, after 12 months of maternity leave, is now back. And we started working on this the first week she was back. So we're looking at what some of our options are right now and putting a plan in place to be able to move forward.
Thank you. That's great news to hear, the return of that staff person. And can you share with us just some approximate timelines of what you're anticipating?
Right. So it's the process is a lot different, right, than for you or I as individuals. But we need to. Right now, we need to look at what the different options are. We'll also need to go through and update our investment policy. And then we want to make sure that we've got things lined up to be able to make a change just in case council were in a lame duck situation. So we are very mindful of that.
Which is, of course, why I was asking the question. So again, I'm going to ask the question, what do you anticipate are the timelines?
So I don't have a specific timeline necessarily right now. Without getting into too much more of the information about what the next steps look like.
Okay, so I'm just noting that for the council table in case we do want at a future date to actually put some timeline requests around that so that we don't fall into that period of time where we can't follow through on some of the directions that we had set out last year. Yes, CAO.
Through you, Chair. Very excited to looking at this future opportunities for this for the portfolio. There are some policy things that we do need to do a deep dive on. The goal is definitely to get this in front of council before elections and lame duck period. That is definitely the target. We are fully resourced in the finance department now, so we are definitely moving ahead on that one. There's huge value, there's huge opportunity, and we are well aware that we're not going to lose that opportunity. We do recall council's direction back in, I'm going to say May, I believe, to move forward and explore those opportunities. So definitely moving forward very quickly as fast as we can.
Thank you for that. All right, all in favor? And that is passed unanimously. And moving on to report 4.2 FS 0226, re 2025 council and appointee remuneration and expenditures. Does council have any questions or comments regarding this report? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder for this? Councillor Mink is the mover. Councillor Clare is the seconder. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. 4.3, Report ES 0226, re 2025 Municipality Port Hope Drinking Water System Annual and Summary Report. Does council have any questions regarding this particular report? Seeing none, I need a mover and seconder for the recommended motion. Councillor Adam is the mover. Councillor Mink is the seconder. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to 4.4, Report ES 0326, re 2025 Municipality Port Hope Community Hub Drinking Water System Annual Report. Again, do you have any questions or comments on this fairly standard report? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder for this? Councillor Clare is the mover. Councillor Darrell is the seconder. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to 4.5, Report ES 0426, re 2026 wastewater consumptive rate increase. Does council have any questions or comments regarding this report? Councillor Todd.
Yeah, my question to staff on this report is if water consumption continues to trend downward and operational costs continue to trend upward, what's the plan to address some of the future costs of water for the municipality?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, I believe firmly that our water costs, our water usage within the municipality is highly unlikely to continue to trend downwards, especially with the likelihood of growth that's going to becoming associated with new nuclear and generalized growth within Northumberland. That having been said, costs will continue to rise, but I feel that cost increases, particularly with materials and labor, are going to be less extreme than we saw in the 2020 to 2023 period as a result of COVID-19 and the fallout of the supply chain failure, et cetera. The plan is for us to engage CM Watson to conduct a full and informed rate study. Staff have been preparing for that rate study in wastewater roughly since the end of September to have a really tight grasp on what our needs are and to separate out wants, to remove frills, to deliver value, to be cost effective. And if we're going to invest, we invest in infrastructure and closing that infrastructure gap. So really responsible stewardship and a really tight managing of resources with a long-term plan. And instead of waiting a 5-year interval to look at a rate study and say this needs to be improved or refined, we've already started looking year over year, how are we performing? What do our financials look like? What are our transfers to reserves, our spend, all of it, so that there isn't a 5-year gap. Every year we look at it and say, here's where we are, and do we need to adjust course? So I think we're really mindful that we need to manage this very much tighter.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. That makes sense to me. Is there any intention on projecting how much consumption we will have to have in the near future based on forecasted costs?
Yeah, so thank you again for the question through the chair. Forecasted numbers should certainly help. There is a development study that's underway for us to find out exactly what our projected numbers are. Consumption as a function of population growth in residential is pretty standard. There isn't major deviation for residential use community to community. So we should be able, with the good work that the director's doing in development, to really come up with an idea of what our growth is going to look like and what our exact usage is going to be, our consumption going forward. But that's just one component of the effect that growth has on what we do. We're also looking at, all of the good things like improving density within our new developments, which have a lower capital carrying cost, lower operational costs. I think that as we continue to grow, it will do good things for our community and our utilities.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Adam.
Thank you. So whilst I understand that probably everybody I know everyone in council noticed all this during budget as a single slide, I don't know if every resident paid too much attention to this. So I'd like to ask you the question: when going through this and when we went through the budget process, all the different departments did a lot of hard work to bring things down as much as they could so we could overall come to a 2.7% increase. What extra work did the wastewater do to come to this? Were there any cuts, or what would be needed for any change to this?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, we have a rate study that has outlined what our capital works would look like as an example. We've identified many of those capital projects from 2020 through 2025 and beyond as capital works that are perhaps unrealistic, identifying that there might be flaws in the thinking that led into our 2019 model. So when I gave staff a mandate for capital expenditures and our operational expenditures this year, it was to separate the needs from the wants and come through with a capital budget and an operational budget that would bear close scrutiny by our residents, because we are seeing a period of unprecedented growth in rates, not only here, but everywhere, and those pressures. And those residents are seeing those pressures not just in their water and wastewater bills, but everywhere. So when we brought in a capital budget this year, we looked for capital projects that would have a high rate of return, which you see in the wastewater garage to enable biosolids disposal, which will have, a 20 to 25% rate of return. Looking at innovative steps with water to have a multi-year membrane replacement plan. We're looking to cut costs wherever we can responsibly in a time of unprecedented pressures. Over the short term, those are two things that I can point to. Over the longer term, we're going to create a rate study that is better than we had before. Port Hope is a mandate for Port Hope 2.0, and Rate Study 2.0 will be the first step in Utility 2.0 within the municipality of Port Hope.
Councillor Clare.
Thank you. And just sort of picking up on Councillor Adams' comment about budget, I just want to confirm, if you can, publicly, that this is really approving the rate increase that is required for the budget that council has already adopted, or the municipality has already adopted. So if we were to not approve this rate increase, we would essentially be reopening the budget for 2026?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, this was identified and baked in, so to speak, to our budget. The expenditures that we're looking at, both on the operational and the capital side, as well as the projected revenues, reflect this increase. So as a result, if council were not to pass this rate increase bylaw, which is foundational to the thinking of the utilities budget, it would create a deficit condition within the 2026 budget, which would take serious work and steps to resolve if it was resolved.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions. Thank you for the thoughtful answers. And I know that we did touch on many of these points during our budget deliberations. So can I get a mover and seconder for the recommended motion listed on the agenda? Councillor Adam is moving. Councillor Clare is seconding. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on now to 4.6, report LLS 0926, third-party contractor for private property parking enforcement. Does council have any questions or comments regarding this report? Okay, I'm going to go to this side of the table first. Councillor Darrell, and then Councillor Mink, and then I'll go to Councillor Todd.
Yeah, the question I have is how did we arrive at the contractor that we selected? Was there a tender process? Just curious to know how we arrived at K9 Security.
Through the chair to you, there's no process with this. This was just the first contractor to come approach us about enforcing private property. We would welcome any contractor who has a contract within the municipality to come and speak to us directly, and we would put forth the same motion to give them the best offer as long as they meet with the standards of coming in with the training, the insurance, and then all the standards that have to be met.
Do you have a follow-up, or are you good? Yep. Okay. Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So through the chair, can you please explain to me how it works where it says that the cost or the fees or whatever that's associated is negotiated between the contractor and the property owner? How does that negotiation happen, and what type of controls are around that?
So basically that's to speak to the fact that it's not costing the municipality anything for this enforcement. If a contractor has an agreement with the property owner, to enforce on that property. That's for them to work out the details with how they want to be compensated for whatever operations they can offer. That has nothing to do with the municipality getting into the negotiations there.
Councillor Todd?
Thank you. Can you explain to me why we're entertaining this in the first place? Like, why can't property owners just get their own people to patrol their parking lots?
So to answer that question, they can, this is what it was before. The security company was going in and patrolling, but there was nothing that could be done as far as, ticketing or anything like that. We have to give them permission to be able to enforce on private property. So they could go in and they could ask somebody, but that's coming down to tracking down vehicles, owners and all this. So we wanted to give an option because we don't have the staffing for basically overnights and weekends right now, which is when the main problems, happen.
And so does that mean that all private property owners would fall under this, or they could still opt out of it? Like, just maybe explain the mechanics of how this works.
So anybody who has a security contractor that has been appointed by the town to enforce on private property would have the benefit of being able to call in that security company to enforce ticketing on private property. And those are the only properties that would be able to, is ones appointed by the town or the municipality.
And I'm just going to add to the chorus of questions by asking, I know that there's a note there that information about this would be put out through the regular communication channels, but I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about how this will be communicated out.
So the private properties that are currently under that contract will have been posting already that this may be coming into effect. So everybody on that property is aware that this enforcement will take place if approved. Also that we're out there looking proper signages on the property because they have to have the signage identifying that if they're parking on private property without consent, that they can be ticketed and or towed.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Darrell.
Just for clarity, so the municipality would still control the parking ticket rate, or would that be up to the security contractor?
The rate is controlled by the municipality.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, the recommended motion is listed on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder for this? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Adam. Any further discussion on this? All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Moving on to our next report, 4.7, LLS 1026, Retraffic and Parking Bylaw Amendment. Does council have any questions or comments regarding this? Councillor Clare?
Just a comment to say thank you. I think this is very much needed and will make it a lot easier to control what has become an increasingly dangerous situation at drop-off and pickup.
Councillor Todd.
Yeah, just a question about, what is the root cause of this problem, and will restricting parking on this street solve it, or just move it to another road?
So speaking to the Percival issue, right now the root cause is pickup. We built in laybys for parents to park. We're trying to work with the school to differentiate pickup times, but that's not that's problematic. Since its inception, it seems like parents are parking on other streets and walking during that point in time, which is what we would like to see. There'll be communications, and as I've stipulated in the past, I'm happy to attend any PTA meetings or anything like that to work with parents so they help understand that children's safety is paramount in this way, and it's been a problem for a lot of years.
Councillor Darrell.
Just a personal comment I can add to this, because I pick up every day at Ganaraska Trail. I found in the past few weeks, since more enforcement has been present of stopping the parking, I find the situation's actually got a little bit worse, because now we created kind of a drop and go situation where parents are hot lapping kind of the block and now you got cars moving faster instead of where they would pull up, park for that 10 or 15-minute time window, and then it's cleared out for the afternoon. So that's just my observation, being there daily.
I'm going to ask if you've got a comment back to that, and if not, I'm going to keep going around the horseshoe.
Well, this is part of the ongoing education, and we're hoping to help parents understand that that's not the way, and we're bringing Port Hope Police into those school zones to watch for anybody speeding along. But the issue we were running into mostly with the parking for the 15 minutes was we were blocking sight lines. Snow hills were too high, kids were walking out in front, buses troubles. So it's kind of that catch-22, but we're hoping that we can slowly mitigate those ones that are traveling around and doing loops and stuff like that to a nice even pace. At least if we can get the sight lines open, that's point one, and then we'll work in steps 2 and 3 as we move along.
I'm just going to jump in and ask, is there any way that we can be ticketing folks who are actually creating these kinds of dangerous situations around the school?
Yes, that's what the signage is intending to do, is to enable us to ticket for those who are blocking sightlines, intersections and stuff like that. There is plans with the new parking bylaw that if this is ineffective for the parking, that we're going to move to no stopping, and we're going to extend out the areas if we have to. And it's just coming into having parents that need to sit there and park a little further away and do a little bit more walking, if that's what it has to come to keep the children safe.
I think I should probably have mentioned that what I really meant was high fines as opposed to just regular ticketing if they can't be incentivized any other way. I'm not sure who is next, but I'll go to Councillor Clare and then Councillor Todd.
I just want to say, too, that from my experience, this is one of the top issues that I hear about, and maybe it's just because I'm a parent at that school, so parents call me about this, but I hear about this regularly and have been for many years. The school has and municipality have tried painting lines on the road where you can't park because it blocks sight lines, it prevents school buses from being able to get out, and it really makes it dangerous for the kids walking. School has been putting out pylons, people park in between the pylons, people park beside the pylons. Like, everything other than making it a bylaw that can be ticketed has been tried. I've seen staff from the school trying to enforce this issue. I don't think it should be on the staff, teachers, to be enforcing parking on our road. I've seen parents being belligerent and shouting at the teachers who are there just trying to keep things safe for these small children. So I think this is a really good move. It's taking responsibility for this road safety issue that really should be on us, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. And back to my question is really, I mean, do we have any leeway to be putting on really hefty fines? Because I feel like if people knew that there was a super hefty fine because they're endangering the lives of children, that the first person who would get a ticket, word would spread really quickly.
We can look at a fine like that, like no parking in a school zone, and have that set at a higher fine under the new parking bylaw. That is definitely something we can look at doing.
I want to cheer that on, but I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Todd.
Thank you. Just final comment, because I agree with I agree with the approach, and it's unfortunate that we've had to take this, but it's a necessary step. I also applaud the school for doing what they can to try and mitigate this, but I also do hope that staff will continue to work with the board to see what the board can do to changes. I do feel it's a little unfortunate that we have to impose bylaws because the board's not taking care of the problem themselves. So I hope that staff will continue those conversations.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Sometimes nobody can be controlled by any entity other than a ticket. So the recommended motion is on the table. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Darrell, seconded by Councillor Mink. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to report 4.8, LLS 1126, re-encroachment bylaw. Does council have any questions or comments around this particular report? Councillor Todd.
Sorry, I seem to have a lot of questions tonight, but my question to staff is in regards to Section 6 of the bylaw. And I'm just curious whether or not the municipality's EDI strategy and framework was used when we were looking at it. There seems to be a section there that I'm concerned a little bit about the language insofar as it gives sort of absolute discretion to the director in some of these applications.
So some of these smaller applications definitely will be overseen by the director, but that is the director's call to bring them to council. We're not going off and just approving random encroachments and stuff like that. The next steps is to follow up with the policy that goes along with this. And I, after speaking with several members of council, will be looking at several policies to go along with this encroachment bylaw. So the idea is to set the framework on a cost amount for the encroachment as to what would be brought to council.
And was the EDI framework used in this one?
So it tries to be inclusive, but if something got missed in the edit, then it'll be changed when the final copy for council is approved.
Great, thank you so much.
No problem.
Councillor Clare.
Yeah, I have a couple. I'm just going to look forward, but no, I'm talking to you over here. One of my concerns is that the broadness of the language in the draft, I think, runs the risk of competing with some of the goals in our climate action plan with respect to naturalization of yards, even use of green infrastructure, bioswales, rain gardens, and things like that, that I think could be in conflict with some of our climate action goals. And I just wanted to share that some members of the EAC, the Environmental Advisory Committee, have been conducting a thorough review of several related bylaws, including property standards, clean yards, and municipal maintenance, and are preparing to bring forward recommendations for considerations by staff and council to ensure that there's alignment between this suite of bylaws that really advance the climate action plan, but also the statement in the Clean Yards bylaw that the municipality seeks to encourage that kind of naturalization and environmentally sensitive use of those spaces. So I am going to bring forward an alternative motion this evening to refer this to the EAC so that it can be included in that sort of comprehensive review. And they had been intending to bring that forward in our April cycle, so I'm not asking to defer it for too long. But I did also have a couple of questions for you. One is related to section 2.1 with the sporting equipment. And my question is really about whether a blanket ban on sporting equipment, the basketball nets, hockey nets, skateboard ramps, is necessary. I understand that these are part of family life. They're a great way for families and children and youth to be outdoors, being active, which are things that I think we value in our community. And I question whether this raises sort of an equity issue, because someone could park a car on the side of a quiet residential road and presumably leave that car there for days on end and be totally fine. But a semi-portable basketball net would be covered by this bylaw. And so I think we need to think about the use of our public spaces, especially when there are no sidewalks, that those roads are more than just for vehicles. They really are for use by the neighbors that reside in those neighborhoods. So wondering if there's an intent here, or whether there could be a provision to amend to permit reasonable recreational use on streets. And do you want me to give you my second question too, or?
Allow me to answer that
Yeah.
one, because I'll try to do that quickly.
Sure.
That's a liability statement. So for us, it's if somebody's playing basketball on our streets and sprains their ankle, breaks their leg while they're playing, it's basically to cover us for those liability lawsuits that it is not permitted. That doesn't mean we're going to be out there enforcing and tearing down every basketball net that comes to, but for the liability sake, that's why that is in there.
Thank you for that. My second question is around accessibility. And I noted that the bylaw has no exemption for accessibility features that might be distinct from other structures that people might be encroaching on municipal property. So, a resident with a fairly large boulevard that makes up the brunt of their sort of front yard space who needed to put in an accessibility ramp, for example, or some other feature like that, would they still be subject to the permit application fee and that requirement for insurance? which, yeah, I'm questioning that because that could be, you know, an undue burden to put on people who need those features.
Right now, yes, they would be still liable for a permit. Doesn't mean they can't come and find a waiver or the process to have that fee waived. But yes, currently they would still have to be applying for the permit.
Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So a similar question, I guess, similar to Councillor Clare, that I think this is great from an accessibility point in many regards to not have those encroachments. But I don't know at all. So I don't know if there are scenarios where this is actually, there's things in this bylaw that may be preventing accessibility. So the same idea as Claire referring this to the Environmental Committee, I think that referring this to the Accessibility Committee just is a good practice. It might be fine, but I would just feel more comfortable that they reviewed it. And then we did have an email exchange. So I am fully supportive of the most part of this, things that can be avoided, mitigated, removed. Making our community safer is absolutely where we should be heading. But there are some, I know particularly in the rural area, probably also in the urban area, some historical encroachments where houses and barns and things were there long before the road was there. So just if we can have that discussion maybe later after we defer this as to how do we deal with those historical situations, as well as the question that came up as well, I can talk about my personal situation, is where it's a forest road encroaching onto my property or someone else's private property. How do we handle those unique scenarios where there may be something, a building on private property where the road encroaches, where it looks like it's violating, but it actually isn't. So how do we handle those unique situations? So we can have that discussion. I just wanted to verbally communicate that these are scenarios that are in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Mink. And I'm going to jump into the conversation and ask our CAO question around when we are bringing forward new bylaws, there are a number of different lenses through which it seems that each bylaw needs, just from this conversation, needs to be vetted, or different committees that should be consulted. And I'm wondering if there is actually just a standard plan of how to move forward, because it seems like we have had conversations as of late around bylaws and saying, was it put through this? Was this considered? So instead of this happening at this table, I'm wondering if there could be a checklist that is developed for each new bylaw before it actually gets presented, and that way we have some assurance. It's never foolproof. Checklists are never foolproof, but at least there's a mechanism of knowing that it's gone through all the various considerations that it should be going through.
Through you, Chair, excellent suggestion. I do think, you know, the senior leadership team does review all the staff reports, and most of us are engaged in various committees, and that might be the opportunity to bring that back. Senior leadership team brings it back to those respective committees that we think might be impacted. The comments about sort of the EDI lens as well is interesting too, because it is a very new policy, and we're still trying to bring staff up to speed on bringing through that lens of an EDI perspective. But I hear you, and yeah, it's something we can take back to the senior leadership team, set up a process, what specific committees we think might be applicable, and before we even bring it to council, have it vetted through them. So appreciate the comment.
Councillor Todd, did you have a...
No, actually, I think what you said is going to work really well. I think that's a great approach as we move forward, because there are a lot of lenses that we're putting on stuff, and so it makes sense. You know, I know Councillor Clare had said she was going to put forward an alternate motion. I had one as well, so I had the feeling that we're going to be referring back anyways, but mine was to refer back through so that you know, the language is put through the EDI strategy and framework that we've already approved. But I would leave that with Councillor Clare as you put that forward. May we do some friendly amendments on all of this.
So I guess the question is, do we want to do it on this particular bylaw with the considerations that you've raised, or do we want us, staff, to also develop something that's more of a broader checklist of considerations? Because I think it's an opportunity to make sure that something more standardized, rather than doing one-off amendments to,
Are you suggesting that we build that process and then this bylaw goes through that process? Yes, then I am with you. Yeah.
Councillor Clare.
I'm a bit concerned about what kind of delay that might, because I don't think that staff are going to bring forward that process by next month. Whereas if we just, for this particular bylaw, if we refer it to the committees by motion today, those could be vetted by committees within the next couple of weeks and come back to council in a fairly timely manner.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I'm wondering if this is an opportunity to do a pilot of sorts with this particular bylaw and then create a policy around it. CAO.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I appreciate the separation. I think we don't want to hold this one up, and we can set up the process, the strategy of how we're going to handle that. I like the concept of the pilot, and we'll use this as sort of the template to create the template moving forward, and then we can bring that to council.
So template is separate. Revision to the motion here is still on the table for either Councillor Clare or Councillor Todd, who have talked about wanting to put something forward. Whose motion are we considering here on the screen?
Do we want to just quickly add the EDI piece that Todd proposed, and that way we don't have to amend it? We'll just call that the motion.
And we are going to give the clerk 2 minutes to deal with this. Okay, so we have this on the table. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Todd. And I guess just in the spirit of dashboards and reporting back, do we need to have a separate motion around the request around creating a pilot and a process?
Through you, Chair, I think we're good. Staff have heard what council's asking for. I'm not sure we need a formal motion for that. We are going to create the template through the analysis of this one bylaw, and then I would say very shortly after that, we'll come back with the template.
Okay, I'll trust that makes it to the dashboard then.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion for this particular motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to report 4.9, LLS 1226, re-annual local board and committee reports 2025. Does council have any questions or comments on this? Councillor Clare?
Yeah, I had a question about in the staff report. I'm looking at the clerk. It's a question for you. I know, sorry, you're still trying to finish the last piece. In the report, it talked about, I just wanted to inquire about the timing of bringing forward terms of reference. I know the EAC's terms of reference have been approved by the committee and are ready to be brought forward. Are we able to move forward with that?
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Holloway-Woodwani. I mean, we've seen that. You know, one of the challenges of the work that we do is that we are subject to changing governance environment, and I have shared that with this council on a few occasions. And so, the advisory committee bylaw review, you know, our original intent had been to do that in a fulsome manner, but as this council has seen, we have done that piecemeal, which does not diminish the work that we have done and we continue to do. It is still our goal to bring forward a suggested recommendations for revisions to the advisory committee bylaw. That's something we're actively working on. However, absolutely, if the EAC wishes to bring forward terms of reference for consideration by council, they are able to do that. It would be something that would be led by the department lead, which in this case would be environmental services, and then we would continue to work with them. Every single committee has received direction with respect to the kind of things that need to go into the terms of reference, including things like youth representation. I know that the EAC definitely had a separate motion related to the pilot, with the climate action plan. So I know that those things would have to be addressed through that as well. But yes, absolutely, they can bring that forward as a separate motion. It is our intent we are working very hard on the advisory committee bylaw review, and it is our intent to bring that forward by Q2 2026 as well. But I did want to let you know that.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, the recommended motion is to receive this for information. Can I get a mover and seconder on this? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by our Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Now I'm going to turn over the chair to our Deputy Mayor for notice of motions.
Thank you. So moving on to 5.1, notice of motion regarding Vision Zero strategy, which has been brought forth by Councillor Holloway-Woodwani and seconded by Mayor Hankivsky. And I am going to ask Councillor Holloway-Woodwani to speak to this, please.
Thank you. Happy to. As part of a broader conversation about safer streets and complete streets that support not only vehicles but also other use through active transportation and pedestrians and all of that, this is the end product of about a year's worth of looking at the options given our financial constraints and the cost of some of the more expensive infrastructure options for traffic calming. This is sort of my proposal for how we can move forward strategically in identifying areas where we need to make improvements to curb speeding and make those streets safe for all users, but in a way that's really strategic and enables us to consider all sorts of options along the spectrum, from sort of the more costly built infrastructure to other forms that are a little bit more affordable that we can look at in the short term. So I think this is a really great strategic approach to figuring out how we're going to manage that. And I would like to say I've been tremendously grateful for the enthusiasm that both Director Davidson and our roads manager Dave Beckett have shown for this, and as well to Mayor Elena for this concept.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
oh gosh.
So I'm going to pass it over to Mayor Hankivsky for some words.
Thank you. Old habits die hard. I just wanted to add to everything that Councillor Clare said. Fully supportive of this. And just the other day, I received a letter from a youth in our community expressing their deep concern with, I know it's only just a part of it, but the importance of road safety in this community and not feeling safe in this community in terms of road safety. So it's coming from this table, it's coming from parents, but it's also coming from the youth, and I think that's really important to underscore.
Thank you. For the rest of council, Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So through the chair, thank you very much for bringing this forward. I guess I have a question, then I have a comment. For this, does it also include the responsibility of the pedestrian themselves, or is it just the vehicular traffic? Is there that pedestrian component as well?
Yes, it addresses both. So it addresses sort of that complete streets model to look at safety for all road users, including pedestrians. Yeah.
So thank you, and thank you for, in your motion, including the communities as examples. And I've read from different communities that often when something like this is adopted, there is resistance. There is that narrative. We're moving into a draconian environment, or money grabs, or how am I expected to follow all these rules? And I have no sympathy for those comments whatsoever. So, it's our responsibility to slow down, to follow the rules. And I think that until it's an inclusive situation, that there's always a way to get around it, pun intended, right? So, thank you. I look forward to this.
Thank you. Councillor Attridge.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate this. I appreciate the attachments too, because it gave me a chance to do some reading, but I also got a chance to look up some of the other ones that were done in other municipalities. What I think is really important about this one as we move forward is, because of the municipality and specifically the town of Port Hope has so few sidewalks, and the way in which our road's been built, so many of our children and people with, different abilities have to be on the roads in order to just move around. I think this, as important it is to probably any community to review this for the safety of their people, I see a deeper significance to our community just because of the historical way in which it's been built, and I think it's going to have a huge impact as we move forward. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Any other council members? Seeing none, I would just like to also reiterate what everybody else has said. I agree. I think our number one mandate is safety. That is what we should be always doing, and I appreciate bringing this forward. So we do have a motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Holloway-Woodwani, seconded by the mayor. And is there any other discussion? I'm seeing none, so all in favor? And then that has been passed unanimously. Now, at this point, I'm supposed to hand the chair back over. But I'm power hungry, so I don't want to do that yet. So I'm going to move on to 6 updates and new business, only because I do have just a quick update. I'm going to push this out on people over and over as the Civic Awards nomination process. It does close this Thursday. This is your last opportunity. Procrastinators, this is your time to shine. Please take that time and nominate for a Civic Award. And now I will pass the chair back over to the mayor.
Thank you for that. And yes, moving along with our updates and new business, I'm going to start with a really good news story yet again with Festival and Events Ontario. For the 4th time in a row, both the Port Hope Arts Festival and the Port Hope Candlelight Festival have been named to Festivals and Events Ontario Top 100 Festivals and Events for 2026. So obviously, this repeat honor highlights the creativity, the collaboration, and the dedication that makes our community's signature events stand out right across Ontario. We're excited to build on this momentum, and we look forward to getting that same award next year, so we can say 5 years in a row. I also wanted to share another good news story, and that is that the Rotary of Port Hope had a very successful event on Saturday night that I attended with the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Les, Flavors of Port Hope. And I just have a few things to share from that event, and that is record attendance at this year's fundraiser. The committee feels quite strongly that they're going to exceed the amount that they raised from last year. All the funds are going to be allocated to youth initiatives across Port Hope. And on that point, they had 29 students from Port Hope High School volunteering and assisting at the events. So it was really great to see all the youth out and really participating in the success of the evening. And then I have another announcement at county level regarding the Northumberland County CAO. I'm pleased to share that the County Council has appointed Dan Borowick as the new CEO for Northumberland County. Mr. Borowick previously served the county for more than a decade as Director of Economic Development, Planning and Strategic Initiatives, and many of you will recognize his leadership from a number of projects in the region, and his work has brought significant investment and long-term benefits to the county. We congratulate Mr. Borowick on this announcement and his appointment, and look forward to working with him in this new role. And now I will turn it over to any other council members that may have an update that they would like to share around the table. Councillor Adam, Deputy Mayor Adam.
Thank you. So you reminded me when you were talking about the flavors of Port Hope. On the same evening, there was also the coldest night of the year, and I would like to highlight the fact that so this is my 12th year of being able to participate with the coldest night of the year. I was very happy to do so again, and again, this community, as it always does, came out and supported, and it hit and exceeded its goal yet again for 12 straight years. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
And just to give a figure on that, that was the goal of $60,000 that was exceeded. So yes, great turnout. Thank you for bringing that up, Deputy Mayor. Okay, moving on now to question period. It's now time for question period. Remember, the purpose of question period is to ask council members questions in relation to municipal business. It's not meant to be an avenue to ask questions to staff. So at this point, I'm going to ask staff to leave council chambers. And for those of you in the audience, you can think about the questions you would like to ask, get ready, and then you will be coming up to the microphone to ask your questions. I did the calculation. I got the numbers from One Invest. I didn't want to bring it up, but that's the number. Okay, before we turn to the public, we'll start with councillors. Do councillors have any questions that they would like to ask of their fellow councillors? I'm not even asking the media question anymore. I'm just completely discouraged by that. Maybe one of these days we will actually make a concerted effort to try to reach out to media and have them attend one of our meetings. Councillor Clare.
On the media piece, I have been assured by the handful of journalists that do operate in Northumberland that they do watch our council meetings and claim that they often watch them live. So I wonder if they could be participating over Zoom to ask questions of council.
I'm sure they would absolutely be able to ask questions of council on Zoom. Certainly that is the practice at the county level. Okay, questions from the public?
Hi, Ed White, Mill Street. I got more questions than Councillor Todd tonight. Regarding the vision road safety thing.
Ed, can I just ask you to come a little closer to the mic so that everybody can hear you that's online as well? It's hard to hear if you're that far away. Thank you.
Okay. Did it again. Yeah, are there specific areas that you're interested in getting road safety? Are there specific timelines for doing this, or is that something that's a future issue?
I'm going to let Councillor Clare weigh in on this.
So in the motion, one of the things that's covered in the strategy is to do the baseline work to identify the most problematic areas and neighborhoods. And I think Councillor Todd highlighted, areas where there are no sidewalks, for example, will definitely, be something that would looked at, school safety zones, but also places where we know there's high rates of collisions or near collisions, speeding, places that are known to be, where there's high speeds. So the staff team and police and all that will collaborate to identify the zones that will be prioritized. We haven't prescribed that. That will be part of the work in developing the strategy. And the motion also does ask that staff include in the 2027 budget any expense that would need to be incurred in order to develop the strategy. So once this is approved, staff could presumably start working on it, but if there was anything that needed budget, then it would be coming forward for 2027.
Is there going to be any public consultation on this? For instance, I think one of the most dangerous crosswalks in the whole town is right out in front of my shop. That's a really bad one with the way the lanes are. Would there be any plans for public consultation?
Go ahead. Yeah, that public input and participation is generally part of the process for developing these strategies, because it's also about understanding how people use the streets, right? And how they would like to be using them should they be deemed more safe.
Exactly. Okay. What is the contract? I didn't understand what kind of contract there is with bylaw on parking lots or cars parking in parking lots. I didn't understand what the contract thing was. Is the town do people get in touch with the town if they have a big parking lot like a stores or restaurants or anything like that, or how is that done? Oh, great, I broke it.
No. Oh, there we go. There we go. Great question, Ed. Happy to give you a very detailed response from the staff on the details of that contract. It's, we're not in the nitty-gritty of this, but I think, as was well explained this evening, that contract would be between the resident and the provider, and that the municipality would be facilitating communications around that.
So they actually have a contract with the town for the bylaw to?
No, they have a contract with K9 Security.
Oh, I see, okay. Okay, and I guess the last question I'm going to ask is, again, on the same bylaw thing, is this still going to be complaint-based, or are they going to tour around?
I think that is up to the security company itself in terms of what they're going to set up with the private property owner. I assume that it would be a combination between of the two, that they would be monitoring and that they would be responding to complaints, especially at times where there's heavy traffic, heavy parking, special events, etc.
Okay, are they going to be responsible for looking at the sports equipment on the sides of the road and stuff like that? Is that part of their mandate, or whose mandate is that?
That's municipal bylaw.
And that is still complaint-driven?
I think probably to an extent, but I think, as you heard, that there's going to be a reasonable person approach to that, taking into account that there are potential legal liabilities for the municipality.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any last questions?
Jim Sculthorpe, 1685 Willow Beach Road. The Works Department have done an excellent job on snow removal this winter, but there are two locations that I'm wondering if you have looked at. One is west of Pine Street on the south side, when you come down Rideout and you go around just before the Catholic Church. The snow is probably 4 feet from the verge, and there's a car that parks there all the time, pushing the eastbound traffic into the westbound lane. So I would be great if someone could have a look at that. And also Strawn Street from Victoria to Lakeshore Road is parking on both sides. As the snow builds up, those cars get closer and closer. The other night, close to Lakeshore, there are particularly multiple cars parking on both sides of the road, and there was a police car sitting in the middle, and there wasn't much room, definitely not two-way traffic available. I'm hoping that he was looking at that and maybe reporting to Council and Works Department.
Well, thank you for bringing forward that question, and we'll make sure that those details are passed on to the appropriate staff.
And I'm wondering if there had been any consideration of making one side of the road or the other side of the road on Strawn Street for parking and not both, because they all have back lanes and garages, I believe.
Certainly, that's another good question that I'll make sure is brought forward to staff, and you'll get an answer to all those questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing those this evening. Okay, at this point, it's time for adjournment. Concludes our business for today's agenda, and it's 7:41 p.m., and I'm going to be calling the Committee of the Whole adjourned.